Chris, how are you? Good. As I mentioned, how everything's been wiped down, so it's safe. It's probably, that's why it smells like Clorox in here. And Jeff, I know when we spoke on Monday, I told you that this is a public meeting, and that we are doing this via remote participation for the public to participate. I can let you know right now, the meeting is being recorded. And the individuals on the call right now, we have our admin assistant, Deb Dunlap, who's helping us with minutes, and we have legal counsel, Ed St. John III, who's also on the call. If anybody should pop into the call, I will let you know, as I like to let everybody else in the room know. I am not being rude. If I look at my screen, I don't mean to be rude, but I'm just handling the logistics of who's in the room and what's going on with the screen. So my apologies up front. Okay. Okay. And I think I've gone through all of those announcements early this time. I forgot before. So we'll go ahead. What we're going to do is we each have a couple of questions that we're going to ask. We'll kind of go around the room and hopefully leave some room or leave some time at the end for you to ask us some questions. Okay. Okay. So we'll go ahead and just get started. And if you could briefly just tell us how your professional experiences and skills line up with the duties and responsibilities for the police chief for the town of Adams, and what specifically makes you the right fit for our community.
Sure. So my name is Jeff Coe. Hello, everyone. Thanks for allowing me to be part of this interview process. I am the chief of police in Dalton currently. I've had a 23-year career in law enforcement there, working through the ranks of part-time to full-time sergeant, which was also civil service. Then I went through an assessment center and a local interview panel for the selection for chief. And I've been chief for 8.5 years there. What would make me fit here is having that experience right here in Berkshire County. I also did a lot of mutual aid work back in the days of Detective Ordina, a lot through the DA's task force, where I did work right here. So this community has always just caught my eye. When I started commuting to chief's meetings with Chief Tarsa, I always told him, for some reason, if I ever leave Dalton, Adams is the only place in the county that really caught my eye. It's just beautiful. First of all, you have a very good slice of business and commercial. That's something we're lacking in Dalton, and residential. But more importantly, it's the professionalism of the officers in your police department. You have a good department that has a good name in the county, amongst the other departments. But what stood out to me was the similar trust and support your community members have for those officers, very similar to what we have in Dalton. We have tremendous community support. So it is what caught my attention. And my experience, again, here in Berkshire County, I think, would allow me, and I don't know who you're interviewing, and I know there's other candidates, would allow maybe me have a little bit of an opportunity to hit the ground running, so that the partnerships I have with the Sheriff's Department, with the DA's office, I've been in North Berkshire Court, Central Court, and South County Courts, with my work with Berkshire Law Enforcement Council, which is an entity that all the chiefs in the county meet once a month. We've been very active with that, so I know the surrounding chiefs. Although I'm from Dalton, we just communicate well as a county. So I think I would be able to hit the ground running as far as keeping your imprint and a seat at the table and a face that people know to call. You know, everyone has my cell phone number that are officers in the counties. We operate on mutual aid. Is a necessity for all of our small towns. So I think that would help me. I do know some of your officers. You know, the newer officers I may have met, but I'm not very familiar. All law enforcement departments, by the way, all police departments are dealing with a very young, newer force. You know, the joke I always had with the seniors in my town was, I don't know who the officers are anymore. And I said, I don't know them either. You know, it's just because there's just a high turnaround. And state police, I don't know if you're having that problem. State police has just been, once we get someone paid and trained, and about that 4 or 5 year mark, so they're comfortable making decisions, the state police grab them from us. So we've been having that never-ending cycle of filling in vacancies and spending money.
It either happens or the threat happens. It doesn't go to me. One of the things I did not do is we did not do introductions, so when you do ask your first question, if you'll state your name, I know we have nameplates, and if the traffic noise gets to be too much, it's, I guess, let Jay know, because he's closer to the windows, and he'll help us with the windows, but it's helping with a little bit of a comfortable cross breeze. So that's all my hospitable announcements. But Joe, if you'd like to ask your first question.
Yes, I would. And first of all, thank you for your interest in becoming the interim chief of our community. Thank you very much. My name is Joe Novak. I'm a lifetime resident of Adams, and I'm in my 3rd term as selectman. And my question to you is, in light of the ongoing protests taking place throughout our nation and abroad regarding the death of George Floyd by overzealous law enforcement personnel, do you see policing tactics and racial stereotyping continuing? Will the powers that be relent, or will the same situation rise again? I ask this because there have been other racially charged and egregious actions undertaken by police officers, resulting in the unwarranted death of Black Americans. Still nothing has transpired to curb these happenings. Please expound on your views and discuss how racial profiling can finally be put to rest. I strongly believe that all lives matter, regardless of the color of one's skin or any other attributes which one possesses. The world is big enough to accommodate everyone if the blinders are allowed to be removed.
Here, first of all, and it's a very long and complicated question, and I have an answer. First of all, there's 2 things that your question addresses: is police brutality and discrimination, and they have to be fought separately. I don't want to, because some of what you're seeing is brutality, and some of what you're seeing is nationwide over a period of time. I'm not saying just with the Floyd case. I'm saying what you're saying is leading to the national push here, and both of those need to be addressed. Your police department and in Berkshire County, we do a lot to address both. Particularly, the chiefs have met with Multicultural Bridge, Rundgren, Hampton, Van Zandt. I personally worked with her in our school district, and it has to be countywide. And what I like about the Bridge program, which is a nonprofit out of I think it's out of Great Barrington, and other districts have used it, is that they take on an approach for the entire county. And to answer your question, that's how you deal with, first of all, the discrimination of people of color, and to help people get educated. I think there's a fear of talking about discrimination, and I think at first you have to have that conversation. And just what we learned at our committee is just meeting once a month and having that, bringing the people together was a great launching point. And after about 3 months, and the first couple meetings, there was some hurt feelings. A lot of people didn't like having the uncomfortable conversation, and they help you learn. Get comfortable about being get comfortable being uncomfortable. You got to have these questions. If we don't talk about discrimination, we're not going to solve it. So they really do lay out the foundation of baby steps and kind of get everyone on the same page. And you start realizing when they're talking about discrimination as a white male, and I was a white male cop in the room, okay, with educators and everyone else from the community, they're not necessarily pointing a finger at you saying you. They're trying to get you to understand the idea and their feelings, and if you listen, they have a lot to say, and a lot spreads crosses boundaries, and it does unite. And so we've been doing work with Multicultural Bridge in the Berkshire County, in the Central Berkshire Regional School District, for about 2 years now. It is a process. It's not a quick hit and run. You got to stay with it, and you got to dedicate time to it. But we were really gearing up, so they introduced some curriculum for the kids They did some training. They had a great play, pipeline down in, Great Barrington that we were all invited to watch. That really spoke to the kids. So they're speaking to the kids on multiple levels, not just in the classroom, but after-school activities and some philosophies, and workshops. They have great workshops, even with educators, but that was, while they're doing one front with the students, they were doing another front with the educators and the administrators, and then, of course, they had outside groups like the police department, and we were part of that. We were just getting to the point where we were gonna start having I was on the community outreach committee. That was one of my committees that I was assigned to. And we were just starting, we're a 7-town school district. It makes it a little difficult because we are a lot of land area. So, and more till you get into the hill towns, there's just not these resources that you have, like a resource center to go to. So we're thinking, how do we include people? Because what you're talking about really is inclusiveness. And so we were gonna have 3 venues, one in Dalton, one in Hinsdale, and one in Beckett, where we, not only announce, but we go and specifically invite people to attend, because that's a big thing too, is people who don't feel that they're part of a community or a group, they're gonna show with a bulletin in a paper. You have to go and reach out. And we were gonna have, short sessions, maybe a movie night, and we had these ideas, and then COVID hit, and, now we're withdrawn even more. So those are some of the answers. It's very easy if you don't have a multicultural bridge. All their work, like Not in Our Town, it's a anti-discrimination pledge that you take. There is so much material that your town, no matter who you choose for a chief, can go to and use. But 2 things that I think is getting that type of training to your police officers, and I know your police officers here have had some of that. Over the last 4 years, Massachusetts has made sure that mandatory training in increments and actually building blocks over the last 4 years have been happening. So hopefully, you've been seeing that in your officers. And I think your officers have as much face-to-face community contact as we do in Dalton. And really, that's what it is. You gotta start just talking to people. If you sit in your cruiser and keep on going, nobody's gonna know you, nobody's gonna trust you. And those interactions help. But there's materials that we're starting to use, like I said, and it helps that it's the school administration that's leading it, because that is the big, it's part of, I don't know if it's the same here, it's half our budget, half every town's budget. So, and they have, this is what they do, they teach, they set venues, do field trips, so I'm glad they're leading it and bringing us in. I know it's a long answer, but it was a complicated question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Rick Blanchard. My question is, identify and discuss your experience in creating, reviewing, assessing law enforcement policy and procedure, agency directives, or general orders.
Sure, that's, so I've been working on that the last 2 years. There is a state agency called Massachusetts Accreditation Commission, and they help agencies, big and small, to try and get to accreditation, which is the best standards. You may have heard of CALIA, that's the national standard. We have mass accreditation. They follow very closely with CALIA, but as you know, Massachusetts laws and Massachusetts government is very much different than everywhere else in the country. So, through Massachusetts Police and Western Massachusetts, we all kind of gravitate to our entities because they do take into account mass laws which separate. So it's not that the best practice is so different, it's just you gotta kind of pigeonhole it for Massachusetts. And they have standards and templates. In addition, the last couple of years, and this is huge, the last time Mass Chiefs, which we all have these policies, I'm willing to bet the building over on School Street had the book that was 1999, 2000, and it's just antiquated. Mass Chiefs has had their in-house counsel, so it's an attorney, writing and updating policies that are in line with the accreditation standard. They're then sending it to the accreditation agency to vet it. They're sending it to Mass Training Council, the Police Training Council, or the academy where we go to make sure it's in line with them. And then they're sending it to the Executive Office of Public Safety. What an ingenious idea. So then they're handing them to chiefs. They're coming out piecemeal. I mean, it's not that you can't comprehensively look at your own policies and say, okay, this is old. You know, our policies still said patrolling. I've changed all of it, you know, as a quick search and find and swap with patrol officer. You know, those are just quick things, but then you have to take what they send out, because it's meant for all departments across state, and tailor make it to your agency. You guys have 3 sergeants, I have 1. One on second shift, I have no sergeant on midnight. You know, I think there's a possibility, or there's been a lieutenant in the past. Like, you would wanna, who's the on-call supervisor, who's the senior supervisor? The tasks still remain the same, you just assign who does, the line officer, the supervisor, and then above for review. So there are standards out there. It's not as difficult as everyone thinks. And they set up a self-assessment, then certification, and then full accreditation, so you don't have to look at the whole thing. You're I think there's, it's over 50 standards. I want to say it might even be close to 70 standards. So you can do like the first 20 and you're in self-assessment. Once you pass that, you're working towards self-certification and onward. I don't know, I don't believe there's any other police agency in Berkshire County other than Great Barrington that's made accreditation. Most of us are self-assessment. I've probably revamped close to 24 policies in the last 2 years, bringing in my union president from the onset, my supervisor, I only have 1, but I bring in supervisor, and if it's a specialty area, if it's firearms or defensive tactics, I bring in those officers, and we sit down and we say, how can we best curtail this to our department? And when you do that from the onset, it's very easy to get these passed. I know you have Mass Coalition Police, we have Mass Coalition. I was actually the Area 12 Vice President for many years before I got promoted. If you bring them in early and ask questions and give them prior notice and an ample opportunity to talk, most of your problems disappear and you can pass these policies. So it's not as difficult as people think of.
Just one quick follow-up. I'm not sure the situation in Dahlin. Here, our charter designates the board of selectmen as the policy writers for the police department. We just got to see that maybe 2 months ago, got it from Rick. I mean, Rick did go up.
Oh, yeah.
And, so we're in the process of looking at that, and we'd be looking to update. And as far as your supervisor, he's a hell of a guy.
Yes, he is.
Madam Chair, just a quick follow-up. So, as Rick mentioned, the board of selectmen is involved with policy, writing, updating, with, of course, inputs from the top manager and police chief. Did your board of selectmen have any role in the updating of your policy in Dalton?
So, yes and no. Depending on what the policy was, there was an interest. Otherwise, if it was, because a lot of these are just like the domestic, response to domestic abuse. There's been changes in the case law sense that was, you know, it's not reflective. So when it was changing just law, it's really spoon-fed to us. So this is the law now. So you just kind of, you take out section A and you put in the new case law. So on those type of things, there really wasn't a formal, and it is in mind, you know, it depends who you ask us. I served under many boards, and there was a board that felt as though they approved it, but it was written up in my contract and my job description that I passed all policies. So it's not that I'm against, and if it's in your charter that you pass it, it's just more the way I see it is if you're going to discipline on policy or want discipline, why not bring you in so you clearly understand that policy before you make decisions on policy? So I have no problem with them. It was just convenient for me for time's sake, based on how town meetings are set up and public information, that certain ones were just, hey, just so you know, the change in law, this was updated, okay. Our form of government is a little different. We have a town manager, so my direct boss was my town manager, so I had that day-to-day, okay, go ahead. Whereas the select board was more of the appointing and firing authority.
Yeah, we're not looking, state law is state law.
Yeah.
I'm just Adam's policy, more or less, you know. uniform with the cap and the.
I think the distinction that when I spoke with, there's a distinction between personnel management, personnel policy, and then there's street policy,
Sure.
education
Oh,
policy.
yes,
stores.
yes. Like rules and regulations might be, certainly, yeah, I mean, the rules and regulations, you would want everyone on board, before they got approved. Again, you're asking, I'm a little bit different, though, I had a little more leeway, and I could go directly to my town manager and get things done. But yeah, I mean, yes, administratively, how things are done in the police department, my board would certainly want to hear about and weigh in on.
These are two members of the Public Safety Committee of the Board of Selectmen. So they have a big interest in the policy, for good reason.
Hi, I'm Jim Bushy, Vice Chairman of the Board of Selectmen. How much experience have you had working with a collective bargaining unit? And what do you consider the essential elements of elective labor management relations?
So just about my entire career, I've had, experience. So I think I'm trying to think what our number is, now this is the year we joined, but, we were an association when I joined. We had, we just had meetings and we didn't have an attorney or we didn't pay dues. And we looked at mass coalition of police who you have, so it fits in. During that time, I served as a negotiator on Fort Patrol. Then I left that, or then I became the area vice president, and I went to Worcester 1 year and served on the Maine board. And when I became sergeant, I felt as though, or when I wanted to become sergeant, I felt as though I should kind of distance myself from the dark side management versus labor. And then when I became on the management side, because I had come from that, I eroded, I feel like I did, and I think I've had several presidents, I think they'll tell you the same thing. I eroded the whole us and them dark side, you know. If you just give notice and bring them in early, sit down and have a conversation, you can get rid of a lot of problems. I've had one grievance in 8.5 years, and it ended up favorable to me. And even though it was favorable, we still sat down afterwards and impact bargain, if you will. But I've had experience. I also I have a master's degree, and it was one of my courses where we had to do mock hearings. But I've taken part of grievances. I've written grievances. There's actually a proper way to write grievances. It drives me nuts when unions just say, well, we want to grievance. Well, okay, you got to tell me where in your contract, not just somewhere we think it's wrong. Where in your contract, article, what was the violation and what do you look to remedy? There's actually, you're supposed to have a component that actually, well, what's the remedy and what are you seeking? So a lot of times unions will just say, well, we want to grieve it, and select board members look at the chief and go, well, what's going on? Because a grievance kind of panic. I don't know why. It's just somebody saying, hey, we disagree with, and we want to sit down and so I've had select boards who my grade was based on how many grievances I had. So if I get with the union what they want all the time, I'm going to keep my job, you know, but that was that select board, you know. But to answer your question, I've gone through grievances, arbitration, civil service, because you're not civil service anymore. We are civil service. I was just going to go through my first civil service hearing, but it was withdrawn, and it doesn't have to go through that hearing for hiring processes. But I follow the rule, and as somebody in a hearing that I'm involved with right now just said, I document everything. Jeff Coe documents everything. And it's because on inspection, I want the document that I'm doing for a hearing to speak on its own, so that you don't have to go find a paper over here or what's the I try to make my documents speak on their own, so that a third party comes in and wants to know, well, what's going on, they're getting what, when, where, why, right in that document. I hope that answered your question.
I'm John Duvall. What training and experience do you have in developing and implementing services and programs, courses, and or learning objectives that incorporate diversity?
So again, we're all getting in state training through the Mass Police Training Council. In addition, as you know, and I traveled with Chief Tarsa, chiefs go to extra training every year now in September for a 3-day conference. A lot of it is coming through there, as well as my 2-year involvement with Multicultural Bridge and the Equity Inclusion. I was actually invited by Ms. Van Zandt to join the Berkshire County Race Task Force. And I had gone to 2 meetings before COVID and other things changed. So, as far as you know, my training, it's really through MDTC and through my school district, and then my work with the Equity, Inclusion, and Race Task Force. Developing programs, that was a committee. I was a little bit daunted that I was going to be put on that committee, because if you deal with educators, they have a set way, not a set way, they're used to doing education plans, let me say that. And to throw me in there, I was like, to write curriculum was a daunting task. When they said, we're going to use you for community outreach, I was okay with that, because in my community, I am that face where we're a small town and I grew up in Dalton. I'm that face everyone's going to check with for a reality check, or, hey, we're hearing rumblings that we're having equity inclusion in town, what does that mean? I actually helped sponsor a book read. We had it at local businesses and Dalton CRA. I don't know if you're familiar with it's huge for us in our town. And so I set up a book read there. I actually had the trifold. I felt like my kids, I have 2 teenage daughters. I felt like they were doing a book report. I had the trifold stand and print it out and, you know, told what the reading was about. It had the Not in Our Town pledge there for people, and it was a book read that we chose. Why are all Black kids sitting together in the cafeteria? And it's a great book. It's been a talking piece, not only in our county, but in the nation, and even more recently it's been pointed to. It's a great book. The school district published those, or purchased those, and we set them up at the senior center, as well as the CRA. And we were going to bring it across our 7-town district, our school district as well. But I got to tell you, the seniors really latched onto it. They enjoyed that book being there and having it there. So those are things that you could do here. Is just start getting literature from people of color to share at book clubs and book reads. And the book I mentioned is a good start. But as far as curriculum, if I was here, and I know Rick was trying to do it, I asked the chiefs to see if we could have Gwendolyn and Stephanie Wright, her assistant. She's wonderful. The lessons they do, they kind of ping pong off of one another, they feed off each other, and you always learn. I went to every meeting and I always learned something. I actually paid out of my budget to have them come and teach the officers in my school district. I went to the Berkshire Chiefs and asked last year if we could make it as part of our extra training outside of what was mandatory. It was opted to support the district attorneys, and it was a great course. They had it might have been up here. It was in North House. 2 courses for domestic and sexual assault updates. And so they felt as though it was important to support the new district attorney, and the curriculum was kind of, well, Rick was interested, and he was thinking of doing the same thing I did. I invited the departments from all 7 towns, and we had, I would say about 70% of the officers of all the towns in attendance at my middle school, and had a full day training. I had officers who were not, they're like, what is this about? And they came up at the end and thought it was great. Gwendolyn saw officers' faces and said, I'm not sure how this is going to go by the end of the day. Like the person she thought might be the troublemaker, she said, oh, like, he offered so many good things, or, you know. So it's, again, bringing in those things, just that, if you don't take the opportunity to have the discussion, you're not going to get beyond your own personal biases. We all have implicit biases, and people hear bias and you think that's a negative thing. No, it's just how you were raised. And unless you have the conversations to recognize what you're doing, you can't get beyond it and move on. So as far as, you know, I know it sounded like it was more points to curriculum, but Rick was looking at having her up here as well on his own for the same thing. I don't know if that ever happened.
Gwendolyn has presented to our board
Yeah.
about the pledge.
Yes, was Stephanie with it?
No, but, Stephanie was actually a classmate of mine, in a public policy class over the last year, so very familiar with both of them.
Well versed.
Yeah. So, Jeff, I'm gonna ask you, to talk a little bit about your budgeting experience. And just for frame of reference, the, police department's budget is $1.8 million of our roughly $16 million budget. So if you could, identify and discuss your experience with budget, including any knowledge and skills that you would bring to the table.
My budget, just to give you an idea, it's 2 pages. I saw your budget, I took a look at it. There's a couple things I looked at before I applied. I looked at the patrolman's contract, patrol officer's contract. That is really what dictates how you do things. It really is. Everyone thinks it might be somewhere else, policy. You gotta follow the contract, and it is very reasonable. It's actually a very good contract, I'm gonna tell you that. I don't want the officers involved to see it because it's a very good contract. But I looked at that contract, I looked at the chief's contract to see, what would be expected of the chief, and I saw the budget, or an example of your budget. It's similar to what I have. It looks like, for the most part, it's 2 sheets. Ours is split into an Excel sheet, which I do. I am 100% responsible for my budget and have been for 8.5 years. Nobody does it for me. The accountant doesn't do it for me. My administrative assistant doesn't do it for me. I prepare and I live by it. Usually 6 months, I will make sure I'm on track, because things happen. I know you guys are going through, I don't think you budget for losing people, having to backfill their shift and send 1 or 2 people to academy and that cost. So as soon as something like that happens, or an officer injury, a military activation, I know my budget well enough, and it would take time to learn years. It takes roughly a year to learn it, to know where it is. But I knew my budget well enough to know that we could weather one of it. I call that a major event, having somebody leave and backfilling. If I was thrifty, we could handle 2. But anything more than that, I was going to be going and asking for more money. But my experience is well versed. I daily or weekly conversations with my town accountant. She's wonderful. She's very particular on how things get done. I think she had a resistance from chiefs in the past. Whatever she wanted done, I changed my method and I did it that way. I know how to fill in the spreadsheet with the equations to round up, or however you want to do it, so that it's 40 hours times 52 weeks times the salary. And for your own review, you don't have to do the math, you just to make sure my equation's correct. It's split in under a salary component and then an expense. If I knew I was going over salary, I would not go on a spending spree, and I try to bridge the gap by bringing money from expenses over. If we needed equipment, I tried to find grants so that we could, pay for equipment with grants so that we could bring expense money over before I asked for either an interdepartment transfer by May, I think it is, or, and then, special town meeting, because it's easier to do the interdepartmental transfer before you can go to the special town meeting. And, I know the deadlines, I know when we can, get, best practices of 3 bids versus, have a posting, for capital expenses or services. I have a contract that allows for the clothing allowance like I see yours does. We heavily rely on reserves. We're allowed to carry 5 reserves, and we tend to overuse them because somebody's either at the academy, military injury. We have quite a few reserves that don't have full-time jobs because we're offering them enough between working and details. If they do details, they're making as much as I am as chief. So, but I have very good knowledge. Again, it was one of my college courses for my master's degree, but 8.5 years of experience with it. I've had to go ask for transfers and overages. I was doing well for the first 6 years where I was kind of breaking even for an average. If I went over a year, I tried to save and return money the next year so that I could always, into my finance committee, I just always, well, first of all, they support the police department. They've always trusted me because they know I spend money like it's mine. I don't just think, oh, it's taxpayer dollars. I'm accountable to the taxpayers. I I actually feel that that's my report card with my town. Not how many grievances I have. I think my report card is, how do I do a budget? If I go over, was it reasonable? Did I expect it? Did I communicate it early enough? Was my communication well? And fortunately, my finance committee and I get along, wonderful.
Thank you.
I had to go long, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
With my
Great. Joe?
Okay, as a lifelong resident of Adams, I have witnessed the evolution of our police department. I vividly remember as a young man, the officers walking the streets and addressing you as you pass by. The nightly rounds to stores to check on their security, the writing of tickets for expired parking meters. In short, the Adams police had a visible presence and you knew who they were. Times have changed. They always do. No longer do the town's police officers walk the beat. They drive their cruisers to accomplish their tasks. No longer do they check stores after closing. Instead, they shine a spotlight on a business facade and move on. No longer do they write parking tickets for meter violations. We needed to add a town position to make this transaction. I must admit that I cannot put a name to the face of all of our police officers. What is your take on policing, which I term resident friendly?
Sure. All of what you said is true, in part, not all the time. I don't like using the words all the time or never. In every community, in every town. And first, I must protect the profession and your officers. We are being asked to do so much more than back in the times you're talking about when they did. We are being tasked with so much more in the community for a wide space. It's not just enforcement anymore. We have to do social work. We're dealing with mental health issues. That's predominantly, and I'm sure your officers, it's got to be the same, because it's the same, where we are. They're dealing with things that take more time to get an outcome. Before, those quick tickets was a quick transaction. You could go on and be seen on Main or Park Street, all day long writing tickets. And a lot of towns love that. I can see it. They're doing something. So just because you're not seeing officers doesn't mean they're not doing things. But however, it's our job to listen, whether it's a perceived it's just a perception or it's reality that the officers are not out there. If there's an expression of, hey, we would like to see this, you just have to respond. In my department, it takes one citizen to call and complain about speeding, and there's going to be a cruiser on that street at least twice that week. It might not be every day. There's certain side streets I get complaints on. I get complaints on side streets that are dead ends, and they're like, oh, they're flying. If I put an officer there, it's a waste of time. How many cars are, it's going to be the 5 houses on that street that are going to work, and then no cars, and then when they come home, they're complaining about their neighbors. So you have to pick and choose where you have the best chance of getting that visibility. But I have 3, and I've been quoted as from having these goals recently as well, and my officers are sick of hearing them. I have 3 goals, and they're very general. If you want to keep me happy and you work for me, is think about work while you're at work. That sounds simple, but we all know that there's a lot of people that are distracted at work and not getting things done via Facebook, social media, who knows. Back in the day, when you're talking about when they walked the beat, I knew officers that did their daily and weekly errands, like going to the bank or the mail post office while they're on duty. I'm not a fan of police officers doing anything other than thinking about work while at work, and you can do that by asking 2 questions. Well, should I or could I be doing right? The second thing I preach is share the workload. You have 2 officers on the street. I have 2 officers on the street. If something's going on, even if it's inside the department, and it's a process and there's 10 steps, and you're watching your partner do step 1 and 2 and 3, and not at and don't wait to ask for help. Hey, you need my help? You know what needs to be done. While I'm doing step 1, you pick up step 2, because we're going to clear it off our desk, and now we can get out and be seen more. Also, if the big call comes in, we've kind of cleared our desk off for the small things, so you're always keeping up. So my second goal is share the workload. Third is be part part of the solution, not the problem. One of my best, qualities or my biggest strengths, I don't know if you're gonna ask that, but is problem solving. And why I say that is one of my goals. I see too many people focus on the problem and restate the problem, and restate the problem, and restate the problem, and people just keep on going like fucking chickens. So I find my strength, and it's my job as a supervisor, is to get everyone back together, moving forward towards a solution. So I ask my officers, if something's broken, don't let me find it on my desk. Come to me and say, hey, the check engine light came on this cruiser, but I brought it down to the service station that we have a contract with, and they've already checked it, and it says that this is what it needs, and I told them when because we have cruisers in rotation, so it has 2 days off every week. On my 2 days off, I've scheduled an appointment, they gave me a quote, here you go. Well, how wonderful. There's like, there's dozens of problems, and I know you know this, in a day that, you have all the agencies, I just have the one department, you have all the departments. Dozens of problems that come with it. I mean, that's really what our job is. It really is HR, human resource, and problem solving. And so, what I gravitate to is getting people past looking in the rearview mirror. Let's get to a solution and move forward. And by the way, that solution, and this is where I hope select boards understand in policing, particularly with officers responding to call. It may not be the best solution, but it was the best option available to us. So as long as we're moving towards a solution, it's going to be better than where we are now, gang. So it's, yes, I know it's not a full house, but we have the pair of aces. That's what we were dealt. Let's go with it, and it's a solution better than where we were at. So I kind of went off on that.
Okay, the police chief interacts with members, I'm not on here. The Adams Police Department works closely with the Adams Fire Department, Adams Forest Wardens, EMS, Regional Emergency Management, and State Police, as well as community-based organizations. What has made you an effective collaborator in your current or past jobs?
Sure, and that idea of inclusion, particularly with fire departments, police departments, there's always going to be that, competition or, what are you doing on our calls? This is a fire caller. But when things happen, you're going to see, and I'm sure you see here, we have one of the best fire departments going in Dalton. When stuff happens, they're there, and we all do our jobs. What happens in between, it's nice if everyone gets along, but what you're talking about is the collaboration, and I hope you're talking about collaboration when something's going on, when work's necessary. I'm a chief who will always ask for other agencies. Look, there's other chiefs in the county over a period of time, and you may or may not know any of these that didn't feel as though the sheriff should do anything other than operate the jail. I've never been that. This is before our new Sheriff Bowler took over, but certainly now, because of all the MEMA grants and FEMA grants are all for a collaborative effort. So if I put on a grant out of the police department, we're not going to get it. But if we go to the sheriff, and the sheriff has all kinds of equipment. So why would you not want to reach out to the guy who has everything we're going to need if something happens? You got to, and I have a good relationship, and he's actually one of my references with the sheriff's department, but it's also the state police. I've never been one of those chiefs who gets upset that one or two state police cars are on either Route 8 in Dalton, or, oh my God, they're on a side street. What are they doing on a side street? Hey, there's plenty of it out there for everyone to work. One of my reasonings for VLEC, which I'll take some of the credit, along with Mike Lynn, the chief of Pittsfield, we hadn't met for chiefs in years. The fire department does as well. The fire chiefs just have that system, the ICS system, and they work together as in the county. We weren't doing that, and Sheriff Bowler called us to the jail to have a meeting, and I looked in the room, and it was the first time I'd seen this many chiefs, part-time chiefs, small towns, big. And so I asked, can we start this VLEC thing back up? And Mike Lynn and I kind of spearheaded it. And I started out the president, but I thought he would be better, so I stepped down and became the secretary because he wasn't taking minutes. And what I did is, after every meeting, I recognized that small town agencies with part-time chiefs, you know, do a day job, usually a highway superintendent in South County. I like every highway superintendent out of South County is like a part-time chief. But I would email them, even the chief partner in Cheshire, I would email them the minutes. If something, an announcement was made or training, I was like, hey, here's the, every one of them reached out and said, this is great. I had no idea what was going on in the county. That is happening so much more often, and we were very much now, we mirror the fire department. But I have relationships, I have people on, I have their cell phone numbers right here, for the people surrounding your community as well as mine. We have a mutual aid agreement, I'm sure you signed it, I know you signed it, the DLEC mutual aid agreement, that allows that to happen faster than, Chapter 40 Mass General Law, Chapter 41, which is the mutual aid law, where you had to kind of go through some red tape before you can have that happen. We've already signed it, so the red tape is taken care of, and just about every community in Berkshire County is a member. So the local municipalities, I have everyone on file, they know my name, I know them. The sheriff's department, everyone knows each other, and I would have to get to learn and meet your fire department if I was appointed, but yeah, I mean, that's what we do. Meanwhile, I'm on, as part of my position, I'm on our emergency management committee. It is run by a retired chief, Dan Filio, and he's also on my traffic commission, so he's still kind of my boss. You know, so I work well with, I'm trained, Rick, I think Rick was pretty fully certified too, because we trained taken a lot of trainings. Well, I'm ICS 100, 200, 300, 400. I'm NIMS compliant well beyond. I took many courses on board one day and just started taking courses. I have more training than was required for the chief's position in Massachusetts for ICS and NIMS and emergency management. So if the fire side talks to me in those languages, I know what's going on. I've requested equipment from the county sheriff, so I know it's there. You know, so if needed. You have an agricultural fair, and I know you do, a special night downtown, but I think that's been moving next on the green, don't you? Yeah. I know you have the Thunderbolt and the Rainbow. You mentioned my sergeant, I gave it to him, but he got me addicted to it, is the, incident plans. And actually now we used to just have our own, incident management plan, emergency management plan. Prior to these events, just in case anything happens, and we shared them with the fire department, emergency management, and all the contact numbers were there. We shared them with our police. We have the Dalton Carnival, annually, and we would do it for that. You know, so any kind of event, we have a landing zone already with ordinance, so anyone has to be in a command post. And now we have the training and capability where all that is electronically through NEMA on websites. And so last Dalton Carnival, I uploaded it on there, and it tells them, you say, during this week, this is our event, and it takes it from across the state they're looking at, it puts it in a different color, so it's coming up and they're seeing it, and you just have to remember when your event's done, you take it out so it goes lower, and they categorize them. So, yeah, there's collaboration going, and I would continue to do that here. I would go meet your emergency management director and fire chief and see what we can do.
Just as a follow-up, my question is kind of a lot of, to see if you can play well with others. We've had in history, emergency management director calls meetings, and he'll have it at the fire department. And at the time, the chief refused to go to the fire department. And when it's held at the police station, the fire chief refused, at the time, it's not the current, at the time, refused to go to the police department. So these meetings never really could get going because of individual pride, I guess you would say.
Yeah, so, I say this at my police department, we don't have to, it's awfully nice if we like each other, but we're not being paid to like each other, we're being paid to do a job. And so if you have an emergency management meeting and that's part of my responsibility, I don't care what the relationship is, that's what we're adult professionals, to still show up and, put your best foot forward. And again, you never know, the more time time you sit at a table together, maybe you found out that you, had a grudge that was, in your own mind, maybe projection, if you will, and you can get by it. But, you know, I will let you know that in Dalton, we used to train a lot more, with the fire department. It has changed, but I am at every meeting I have to be at. School Emergency Planning Council, that's a big thing here, and I know you guys do that here with the state police. Troop Canada, we do the same thing. And I have more schools that I feel like I'm drilling every week. I'm like, even my kids say, oh my God, I can't do another drill. Yeah, because I lead my jurisdiction if I can help other towns. But, I fulfill my responsibilities. I have an extreme work ethic. I don't like idle time. I will find work if I don't have work. That's why the policy thing is right up my alley, because when there's not something right on my table, I started in the policy. So I have no problem reaching across disciplines to come together and meet. And it's kind of the problem I have going on in my police department is some of my officers weigh how much they get along with somebody at coffee at a coffee shop versus, well, what are we actually going to do? You know, so they'll say, well, I like that person. Yeah, but we're trying to get, you know, there's too much coffee. You know, it's awfully nice that we can get, like, oh, I don't have coffee with that person. You know, you refuse to have coffee with me, but that person has coffee with me. It's like, no, it's beyond this. You know, we're here to do a job. It's awfully nice that we can get along, but we're here to do a job. So I don't hold grudges. I have a forward, and let's just keep moving forward. Things are going to happen. It's not always going to be pretty times. We're going to have ups and downs. You hire a chief not just for the good times, you hire him for the bad times, and you got to kind of just move forward. And then there may be a time where it's time for those department heads to move on, which is one of the reasons I'm here today.
And thinking about regional and collaborative nature of the police chief position, what is your experience in working with the district attorney's office?
So, I have good experience with both. I was much more involved with the last district attorney because, well, let me explain. I say that because, during his long tenure, and that's actually where I met Mr. Green. During his tenure, I worked for the task force in the building, so I have much, and I ended up getting, my time there increased. It started out 1 day a week to more and more until the time I was full-time for an entire year. So I had a lot of interaction with a lot of ADAs, senior staff, and the district attorney, who gave me a recommendation to become chief. Since the new regime, I believe I'm, in the county, I think I've had more contact and support with the district attorney, Andrea Harrington, than others. And I think she would agree with that. I've gone to press conferences on her behalf, with the juvenile diversion program, and she asked me to speak. But that was, and she also had the domestic violence book read. I read the book, and she had a night at the Colonial with the author, gave on a presentation. Our Chief Tarso went as well, and we went together. You know, any initiative she puts on, I try to get on board. I mean, she's one of the chief law enforcement officers in the county and sets policy. I can tell you, not everyone liked the district attorney Table's policy, but we knew he ran the program, and so it doesn't surprise me that not everyone may agree with Andrea Harrington's policies, but we have to abide by. I have good experiences with them. I have good communications with everyone. We've called each other on the phone and asked questions or advice.
Thank you. The position of police chief requires a high degree of accountability. What does accountability mean to you in a legal sense with regard to data and metrics in terms of relations with the community?
So, wow, they threw me for a curve when you said data and metrics. It's kind of one of the things I'm going through right now in my time, is accountability and using data and metrics to support, my initiative. And there's an objection to that initiative and whether it's correct or not. Matter of fact, if you, I had a hearing last Friday, and it was, the opening statement was being received as one of checking off boxes and following the law. I get there's a personal side to it, and I'm going to bring in people that will show. Matter of fact, the select board last night got 14 letters from 14 past employees in the last 10 years who said they left because they went to a full-time position that we couldn't offer, or the state police or higher paying department that was higher paying, that was not because of me, and that they, all 14 letters in the last 10 years said that they support my and my sergeant's leadership and training. So I am about metrics. However, and this is part of what I'm going through, you have to understand that numbers don't account for everything that's being done. So I'm about accountability. When I became sergeant, my department wanted me to be sergeant because they said, now we're going to have accountability. And I laughed and I said, until it's with you. No, everyone likes it when the other person's being held accountable, but nobody likes to take their medicine. And I believe in remediation, another popular term that's being used right now, rather than punishment. And if there is punishment, you better have your I's dotted and your T's crossed, because there is a lot to be said about a union, a grievance procedure, and the choice of our, well, like in your national service, but arbitration. And the time to worry about it isn't after you've done it, it's before you start the process. And so I am about doing IMC, it's changed names so many times, but I feel as though Rick would probably, Chief Darcy would probably be reverted to by the old name of IMC. Is the database management system that you have, is that what most of us in the county have. And it allows for an analysis, and I do those. But there's a time where you have to look beyond those, but there's a time that, yes, you have to hold accountable to those. And my reasoning for saying that is the default that the stats that IMC prints is incident reports. It's a poor measurement, because I had an officer who, for everything he went to, did an incident report because he was on midnight and he just wanted to show he was active. I'm not saying that's bad, but other people said, I'm not going to do a full incident report. The same information can be done in a daily log entry within an extended narrative. They both did the same thing, they both documented it. However, one got a stat. So incidents is a bogus stat. Then there's arrests. Well, I'm not saying you can't have proactive arrests, you certainly can. Officer Nick Levesque, which is his name, he goes out and he gets proactive arrests all day long on day shift. He's creating, but on midnights, how many cars, I'm certainly more come through Adams, but in Dalton, how many cars come through Dalton on midnights? Not many. So an arrest or citation stat is not going to be nearly as much as we're a commuter town, main streets, bumper to bumper all day long. They're going to have more bites of the apple to do proactive activity. Whereas on midnights, it's really going to be reactive, but that reactive call is more likely going to be very active and bad. So it's going to be an active, domestic, a bad car accident, so the numbers are going to be lower. And so you have to keep that in mind. You can't compare midnights with days. Also, days, certain people on days, like the officer said, might be doing a lot more vehicle, while another officer is doing a lot of the larceny B&E calls. That takes a lot of time. So we try to weigh, what do the stats mean? Now, one of our faults that I'm finding in the hearing I'm going through now is we posted them at the beginning of a bi-monthly annual review. We do a bi-monthly annual review because we also do yearly assessments. And we were told that during annual assessments, which is another data piece driven bit of information for accountability, we do an annual assessment when I took a course on how to give assessments. They said a pitfall is to only, touch base with your employee during your last, the last annual assessment, and then gig them and say, well, you weren't doing this. And I said, well, why don't you come tell me? You told me I would correct it. So I took that back and I said, as a sergeant, I said, why don't we do that? So why don't I do a bi-monthly report with numbers, which is statistical driven of saying, hey, this is what your shift looks like. They know what it means. If there was 0 arrests, well, there shouldn't be 0. I mean, I'm sure something was going on. If there was 4 on midnight for the bi-monthly, okay. You know, that's probably what the call volume was. You can't doctor crime if you shouldn't be. It's either walks like a duck and talks like a duck, and we should make an arrest, or we shouldn't be doing it. It's not walking and talking like a duck, just for the sake of a stat. So I believe in accountability, I believe in stats. They have their place in their time. And it's what I'm going through right now. I'm being told that I remediated based on when a person had better arrest and citation stats than another person. And I look at activity. And for a long time, people, my own attorney said, I get it now. Activity can be so much more than arrest and a citation. You can do a building check. They have to do building checks every night. They have to log them. You will find that half the activity that midnight officers do on midnight shifts and all are building entry checks. It's amazing how many doors they find, and they can't just be visual. I went out and said, hey, what's V? Oh, that's visual. What do you mean? I'm doing a visual check. Do we have buildings disappearing on us? I mean, like, oh, that building's there. No, get out of the car, walk around the building and shake the door. And I want to see more P, physical, than V. Now, I have written them saying to me that, hey, we're having a cold snap. It's going to be below degree weather. Stay in your cars. I mean, it's just absurd to go out and do building checks. They do, the old regime, I was taught this, when you said they do it with their spotlights, on commercial buildings, you can see the slide lock. I still like to get out and shake the door. So the old timer said, hey, look at this, okay. All right, you don't even have to get out of your car. You can just look at the deadbolt and you can see with the spotlight. So that's what they're doing. But no, I say get out of your car. It's kind of this question that you just asked me, is if you've seen me in the paper. This is exactly what I'm going through. Should I have held an officer accountable? That officer saying I held that officer accountable based on arrest and citations. And I'll go further and answer this because it may come up in a question. I'm 100% with I 100% back my decision to remediate this officer 3 times. 2 times in 2017, 1 time in 2018. We've had no problem in 2019 until that officer resigned to go to another agency. And it was clearly documented with, I gave prior notice to that officer, had their union representation there, clearly documented it correctly, including audio recording of the meeting, so it can accurately be heard later, which no one has listened to those recordings yet. And it is clear that it was not about arrest and citations, it was about the lack of activity and decision-making on calls. Maybe a question that comes up later, but it fits right in because it's the heart of the matter of what I'm dealing with is weighing that accountability. I'm a big accountability person. Do work while you're at work. My last one is I said, do work while at work, share the workload, being part of the solution, not the problem. Is when you can, if there's no calls, 3 activities, a minimum of 3 activities. Go out and do a building search, serve a summons, check at a gas station. At closing time, we close early, everything closes at 10. Go at closing time and just check on them while they're cashing out. They're going to, and they do, they love it. And what we find out is building that relationship, going over on this question, building that relationship, they still call you and say, hey, I think something's going on. This guy's walking down Main Street. We're a small town, everything's on Main Street. And so they'll start actually reporting stuff to you. That goes back to your being seen, being heard. So just getting out of the car and an activity can be just having a community interaction. You can be washing the cruiser, be stocking the first aid kit. It's exactly what I'm going through now, but it may look like something different.
But just follow up with the chair, the situation you're in, do you feel that if there were more direct policies in your back to them, and that the board is selecting approves these, obviously to adult them.
Yeah.
But we communicate with the board, and it's all approved, you're following what the town policies and procedures.
So activity, really isn't gonna show up in I mean, it does show up in the rule of regulation as far as your, now you're really testing me here. Response control area, or your, what's it fall under? It is in there. Again, I didn't discipline. I remediated 2 years ago. There was, let me say this. So after the union representation, I got no verbal complaint from the officer or the union, no written complaint, and no grievance from remediation 2 and 3 years ago. So I'd rather not discipline, I'd rather remediate and get, and that person in 2019 operated as they should. So I feel as though my remediation worked. When that person left, they didn't like how I did things. So, and according to the grievance procedure in the contract, you got 5 days. I also have several officers coming in Friday in the second part of the hearing, including the union president, that are gonna testify that I was clear why I was doing it, and that their own observations will back my reasoning for it.
And prior to, the situation that's going on, how did you keep the board of selectmen, I know you work for a town manager, right? So that's a little bit different from what we have here, but how do you keep, or how does the town manager keep the board of selectmen up to date on what's happening in the police department? You know, when you come to budget time, and, you come, when the police department is looking for support from the board, the leaders in the community, how was the communication? How, you know, was there measures discussed, how things were going here? Was there any communication with the board of selectmen?
So part of the reason we did the bi-monthly reports is in case we were asked. We were never asked. I did attend, I attended select board meetings when I was on the agenda. I had, again, my major interaction daily was with, my town manager. He had department head meetings every month, and as part of that, he, a long time ago, requested that we do, a few bullet points of what we talk about so that he could share them with the select board. So I made it exactly that. Every month, I said, this is what we've completed, this is what's new, good or bad, or what would, for budget, staffing, training, commendations. Hey, these are some good cases that happen. I didn't get detailed investigations because they're open and ongoing and they're in court. And it's just a big no-no to go in a public forum and talk about an open case. The rule of thumb was, with the chiefs or the police departments, when they had the ball, correct me if I'm wrong, when we had the ball investigating, if we felt like we needed to reach out to the public and talk, we could. But once we kind of handed the ball off to the DA's office, and the DA's office really wouldn't speak about it, it was kind of hard. But once we handed off the ball, we were supposed to shut up and leave it in the hands of the attorney's office. So that's different on an ongoing case, and sometimes select boards, when it's a big case, are like, hey, what's going on? That's the convenience of having the town administrator, and having the trust of him getting, some details to be able to satisfy your knowledge. I got a big case, the select board gave me an award. In 2005, we had the biggest seizure of drugs, and, I just was lucky, but they wanted to acknowledge me. And the case was ongoing. And we just had gotten the arrest and filed the paperwork. It was really too new. And they wanted to do this public thing. I said, no, it's not the time to spike the ball and high-five each other. We just started this, like down the road if you want to give me a word. And so they did. They honored mine. And I was only a patrol officer at the time. I was a chief, but, you know, there's a time to kind of have that moment. But I would offer, like, we have a commendation system. We didn't have this before I was chief. When I was in the association, we didn't have commendation, so I made the Officer of the Year award, and it was an association thing that we did every year. We nominated people, and then what everyone recognized is we sat around at a table like this, all the officers, and we read nominations. And what they realized is that was actually the award day. It was a day for us to get around and actually say nice things about each other. People took time. You know, John Bishop did it. But we had an officer that is no longer with us. He's in the private sector. He took time, even if he wasn't nominating somebody, just to say a snippet about everyone. He usually used comedy with it and really set the tone, so we let him go. first, but it, you know, somebody ended up winning the award. Well, when I took over, I copied, there's really not, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, you can just, you can have a good career just copying people. Northampton had a commendation system, and they're accredited. I cut and pasted, and so now when people get life saver or CPR, they get a pin and a letter in their file. They get to wear the, you know, some people have so many pins, I only allow them to wear 5, because it just looks gaudy on their dress uniform, so I give them it's a badge holder with 5 spots, and they're like, yeah, they got 4. I said, you pick the 5 that mean the most to you, but we're not gonna march the parade with these. So I always updated them on those good things. Because again, he's gonna hear bad all day long from every department, right? So I try to include those good things as well.
Good, thank you.
Question?
Yes.
So, that actually ends our formal questions. But I wanted to give you an opportunity to, share with us anything that we may not have asked you that you really wanted to make sure that we knew about you and your candidacy,
Yeah,
before you leave the room. We want to make sure you have a chance.
Sure, I guess I just want to say that, I greatly appreciate this opportunity. I know that my name is in the paper. I am confident with my decision. You all know that decisions need to be made. There's times where not everyone agrees with it. And, sometimes you just have to agree to disagree and move on. I love my community. I'm very happy with the relationships I've developed, with seniors in the school district. A letter of support went from the school administrators to my select board. I get that, my media coverage, does raise questions. But what I want to say to you is, I'm more than just a chief. I'm a father of 2 kids in high school. Both want to go to college, and I'm willing to take the risk to recognize if a good thing has come to an end. I feel as though I'm going to have a good outcome, and I'm going to work towards that. That's why I went public. I went public with my hearing to show the community that trusts me that I feel like I'm getting a good decision. But I feel, I sat down with my family, and I feel that the risk is worthwhile to try this interim, not just the full-time. I did put in for the full-time, but this interim. It's a risk, but I think no matter what the outcome of this risk, I've made a good choice. Now, if you offer me the position, I would want to honor my contract. I respect my community, and I want to honor the contract with a 30-day notice. I would have to do 30 days. So I would just want to let you know that. I do not plan on just walking out. And if I don't get this, I have a year left in my contract, and hopefully I will try again for the full-time position. So I understand you guys have a tough situation with COVID and budget up here, and, other things on your plate. So I just wanted to leave you with that, because if I don't get the offer, you'll see me again. My family sat down and we talked, we thought it was worth the risk, and because Adams did catch my eye. For some reason, Dalton and Adams Chiefs have gotten along. I don't know if you know John Bartels. He was a selectman, and now he's on a school committee, but he was a chief. He would ride with Chief Perot to the Chiefs meetings, and they just got along. Chief Perot was part of my selection process for a sergeant, and boy, was he tough. I scored a 92.5 and placed myself first in my department with a civil service test, and he still in that hearing, or the interview, was tough. He was part of my chief selection, so when I got chosen with chief, we drove together, and then when he retired, Rick and I drove. I'm kind of wondering who am I going to drive with, and then if I get this, wow, who will I be driving? But anyways, I just wanted to tell you that, I've talked a lot about being a chief. I wanted to give you a little bit of insight of who I am and why I'm here today at an interim position. I love Dalton, I never envisioned, I would leave. But sometimes you gotta know when to say when for everyone, and that's why I'm here. Okay?
So with that, do you have any questions of us? We have a few minutes.
I don't, other than, if I leave, I don't have health insurance. You know, here, is that a 2-month thing? Is it part of this position?
That hasn't really been discussed yet. I don't think it was contemplated for an interim position, but that can be discussed, with the select board in terms of a contract.
And then, so I did share with you when we spoke on Monday about, kind of an aggressive timeline that we're looking at to honor, Chief Tarse's, retirement of a mid-July date. And you did share with me the 30 days, notice that you would need to be giving. So we are looking at, and Chief Tarse has agreed to, be available past his retirement date if needed. So we do appreciate that. But we are looking to, finish up interviews this week. So we're interviewing tonight, tomorrow and Friday night. And hopefully, discussing this next week, being in touch with each of the candidates, as early as next week. So I think that's kind of where we're at, with the process. I know you have my contact information and you have Jay's contact information if there are any questions that should come up, before we do contact you. But I don't know if there was anything else from anyone, but we ended right on time. I'm very proud of all of you.
Wow,
Yeah,
I felt like I was long-winded.
you're supposed to. We're trying to get to know you. So with that, Jeff, we'll let you get on with your evening.
Great.
We're just gonna probably wrap up our meeting here. It's, very nice to meet you. If we were not in COVID times, I'd shake your hands and thank you for
very much.
being.
Nice to meet you all.
Thank you. All right.